Om Drishyam Pratitam Prabilapayan San Matram Anandaganam Vibhavayam Samahita San Bahir Antaram Va Kalam Yaitaha Sati Karma Bande. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Brahman, the formless reality, is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. It is ever free and indivisible. Therefore, taking what is outside, form, and what is inside, formlessness, render them into one indivisible state. Then meditate deeply upon that state. Pass your time contentedly and be free. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Satyena labhastapassa yesa atma samyagyanena brahmacharyena nityam antaha sharirehi jyotirmayo hi shubhraha yam pashanti atayaha kshinadoshaha. Om shanti shanti shanti. The Atman, the indivisible, all-pervasive self in all beings and in all things, is realized by moderation, by knowledge, by veracity, and by austerities. All of these constantly cultivated. When the impurities of the mind are removed by this practice, then the seer beholds the Atman everywhere and in everything, existing even here in this very life and body. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And so for the next hour and 20 minutes, we'll be beginning on the third class of form and formlessness. Third class, right? Is it? That we've taken on this subject. And that quote from Shankara, Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayan San, take the outside and the inside and render them into one indivisible state, begins our exploration of form and formlessness today. As was said before, and this iceberg chart will guide us nicely in understanding that. That form has two forms, gross and subtle, and then formlessness is just one indivisible mode. And that one indivisible mode of formlessness, which is beyond bodies, which is beyond senses, which is beyond objects, which transcends even the mind, the intellect, the ego, and thought, that is the indivisible mass of pure conscious awareness, Chitgana, they call it. Or Chinmatra. This is beautiful Sanskrit words that we have no equivalents for in English and in many other languages of the world. Designated by the seers according to what they viewed inside of themselves. When we say that, we say the Atman was within, we mean rather with a capital W again. Because within and without is a duality that the seers begin to transcend. This is more understandable in terms of consciousness, Chinmatra. If, in terms of form and formlessness, the title, if one understands that when they say form, it has two modes, manifested prakriti and unmanifested prakriti, then it becomes even more true of this statement. It's not like you're trying to get beyond dualities, it's like you're trying to see that there is no such thing as duality from the highest viewpoint. Duality is a superimposition or an assumption by the soul. And so you won't find really enlightened souls living in a state of oneness talking about duality much, unless they meet someone who is under the influence. They think dualities are real. Mother's wisdom, mother's non-dual wisdom escapes every soul who assumes that virtue and vice are real. Ram Prasad sings in one of his songs. So virtue and vice, pleasure and pain, life and death, even bondage and liberation, not ultimately real, especially from the standpoint of Brahman. So in order to step there, footfalls of the rishis, when they took these footfalls out from their true nature and then took them back in, that's called involution, by the way. We're bereft of a theory or of an ideology of involution in the West, unfortunately. We only think of evolution. That's one thing to think about. But when they did take this step inward, they saw that inward was as dreamlike as outward. This is the way Gaudapada would put it in his Karaka, is that within and without is just another duality. So what they're seeing within is more form, is what they're saying here. And that's why, put it in terms of your waking state and your dreaming state. You see form here, then you see less of it inside, unless you dream a lot, because most people go into deep sleep for a while, which actually proves an entirely different point, that there is such a thing as conditioned formlessness, formless form, we could call it. But that aside for now, stepping inside to the dream state, then you see less form there, but you still see forms. Those are the kingdoms of heaven within. I've often made the point that where else would you find the kingdom of heaven? Up? I don't think so. The heavens as far as worlds and physical space and so forth, yes, you'll see those up there. If you want to call those the vault of heaven, you can. But that's a poetic expression. Philosophical expression means that when you go within and you go into your dream states, that's when you're seeing these subtle forms that act as an imposition on your enlightenment just as much as the outer. Why? Because they are also invested with form. So Gaudapada says the waking state and the dream state mirror each other, and you see the very same things in them. They're really not that different. The tanmatras change. Things become solid out here, but they're in their seed form inside of you, just like the tip and the base of the iceberg. So what you don't see, you see, and don't bring out, that will cause you a problem, Jesus said. So you must see what's inside and understand it, and then you'll see that this is dream number 1 and dream number 2. That's how Ramana Maharshi put the thought of Gaudapada later, in recent times, even in the 1900s. So that step inside that you're taking to formlessness, the first set of formlessness, is the realm of subtle forms, or your subtle body. Sukshma Sharira. So you have a subtle body and you visit it every night. And after death you'll visit it, according to the Tibetans and the Bardo states. You also have a sort of individualized form that moves around somewhere. Last week I was talking about the ineffectivity and inferiorness of astral projection. Some people are into that. If you think about it, and you look down on your bed from sleep, or you die in a hospital and you look down on yourself, that's astral projection. That's not going inside. You're going into a subtle form, but you're going outward with it. So you're projecting a subtle form outward to see what is outward already. It's much like the atom. You're going into the atom, splitting it, and seeing protons and neutrons and quarks and subatomic particles. You're seeing the inside of the outside. You're not seeing inside at all. So your dreams are a step inward. And when those become magnified, or let's say lit up by knowledge of the scriptures, the Dharma, and by the instructions of the teacher, and by your own meditation, your spiritual practice, then you see this as a separate, connected reality. Form and formlessness then start to make sense to you. And then you can understand where the seeds are for this world. You'll stop looking outside for them and get caught in gardening or forestry. See, all the seeds that are there, which just go on and on. But if you burn them, they won't germinate anymore. So as Sri Ramakrishna said, if you go inside and see the origins to objects, where their seeds are, you'll burn them. That would be like letting the light of deep sleep in, see, in a big way. Most people just catch a glimpse of the light of deep sleep and turn off to it in some spiritually comatose state. But if they go inside and see the light and say, more please, more, and then that light begins to flood them, it'll permeate their dreaming and waking state, and they'll wake up remembering this light inside of them. And that light will burn more and more of the seeds, that is your attachment to the seeds. They won't germinate anymore, so you won't produce bodies, you won't produce worlds in time and space. You won't engage in sankalpa that's unwise or unconscious. So conscious sankalpa, lilic sankalpa we call it, rather than mayic sankalpa, that's a different thing altogether. But the person engaging in lila sankalpa is in control because has knowledge of what inside really means. And so to that extent, form and formlessness are a duality that you would want to transcend in order to get to ultimate formlessness. Nirvana, samadhi, satori, fana, nirvikalpa, asampragyata. There are words in different Indian darshanas for that formless state. We'd say with an uppercase F. So that has all been introduced last week, and of course for years we've been talking about it because we don't see why people aren't becoming akamai, that's a Hawaiian word for in the know, about these inner dynamics of their own soul, how their soul is shifting phases of consciousness, and simply bringing your attention to the fact that they are, rather than just calling a dream a figment of your imagination or calling deep sleep non-existence because you didn't see it. That's part of the point. You didn't see it. It was beyond your ego. Your ego died. And that was a good thing, because you came out back refreshed out of deep sleep. But dreaming for 8 hours, you came out running a race in a dream and run yourself ragged besides, depending on the nature of your dreams, or attached to more pleasure, because Patanjali, the father of yoga, says there's pleasure out here, but one of the 4 impediments to your meditation is inner pleasure. So you must be in your dream state, playing with that and having good dreams. See, there's a kind of sattva in dream too, that you play with. And you come out and you say, oh, what nice dreams I had last night, but it didn't transform you one iota. It didn't prevent the fact that you went in and had nightmares the next night. It didn't awaken you to your true nature. How many didn'ts do we have to cite about the limitation of experiences? You are the experiencer, but you think you're the experience. And it's true here on the outside with your senses. Oh, people are so much into their experience that they begin to identify with the object. Imagine that. I'm an object. I'm a body. I'm a TV set. I'm a football field. Whatever it is, so much outside. As my teacher used to say, what about God in your life? Oh, I'll turn to God when God comes to me. And then my teacher would say, but God will not come into your TV set, will not come into the bowling alley, will not come into the football arena. So you have to turn and face the original. Ram Prasad's song again, turn in within and face the original, go within yourself and spend enough time in there, hopefully with the third eye open, that you'll begin to see everything that you've produced, everything that the mind has reaped and wreaked on your soul. And then you can have a chance of transcending both suffering and pleasure, both virtue and vice. Why just give up vice and pain and have more pleasure? Because that's been cited by all the seers as being a trap. Sometimes a greater trap than sobering awakenings like pain. And what to speak of all that, conscious renunciation or detachment from things is a mindset of its own, is a mental posture. You see, the people that you admire, they're noble because of that, because you see them sitting there without any attachments, without any objects around them, without any undue thought processes going on, all the time. This has become their modus operandi of everyday life. They are the yogis and yoginis amongst us. So, and they can move amongst the sense objects, as the father of yoga said, without getting attached to them. So, more power to them. But we must take them as exemplars. The path of asceticism is not for the many, that's for certain. Like the path that even Buddha gave it up to go for a fuller path. So it's a good start, good place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. You want to come back to this fullness of existence, that all this is Brahman, that I and my Father are one, that I am that reality, Om Tat Sat, Tat Tvamasi. Those kinds of realizations are beyond form and formlessness, bondage and liberation, life and death, and other pairs of opposites. So with that little preamble today on our third class, we will, and after having taken a deep dive into the 6 or so charts that we've looked at over the past 2 classes, if you remember them well, then we can go ahead and approach from more angles this middle ground of cosmology, Indian cosmology. It's Samkhya Yoga based, but you'll find it accented in Judaism, Christianity. It's the heavens of those religions, and in Muslim religion too. It has form. That's the one thing we have to say as adherents to non-dual truth, is that it has form. Anytime it has form, then there's change, isn't there? So then what about the formless that's beyond form, rupa, and formlessness, arupa? That is beyond waking and dreaming, beyond any ability for the 5 senses to apprehend. Only deep sleep or deep meditation, where I suddenly left the realm of the ego and the mind's projections, did I get a glimpse of something that might be beyond what everyone's attached to, form. Life with a lowercase l, but didn't Christ talk about eternal life? And when he said, the right hand of my Father in heaven, what did he really mean by that? We should ask. And that might be the realm of Ishvara, we would say, in our tradition. But it could also be that when he realized this oneness with the Father, that he was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, like he was when he was sitting in the wilderness for so long. Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, all went into the wilderness and sat for a long time. So 40 days and 40 nights kind of idea is there in many of those same religions we're talking about. So different ways of understanding this then come forward on the level of understanding to show us something that we're not seeing yet. That would be formlessness with a small f. It's a whole cross-section, very wide and very thick, of life experience that we're not seeing. We're going from waking to dreaming to deep sleep. We don't remember our deep sleep, so we just have these 2 left to us, these 2 realms of form. And when we go into the second one, dreaming, we don't consider it real, or we don't consider it something to be mastered, something to bring light to, and be able to get beyond form and have formless experience. When we have formless experience, the ego disappears, but the true self stands forth, they say. So the ego is under operations, you see, with the mind in its toe, projecting forms without end on all levels of existence up to a place where it cannot exist anymore. It can't breathe at the heights of non-dual awareness. It expires. That's what you should be looking for if you're a lover of the formless. That's what you were seeking if you sat under a tree or went into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. And that experience, you bring it back full force, Vedanta says. Shat-satkara, that is, you have this truth and you bring it into life. After seeing it, you bring it back full circle, so that the fullness of everything, Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamadachite, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate, all that is proceeding out of the senses is finite, all that is beyond the senses is infinite. From the infinite, the finite has come, yet being infinite, only infinite remains. So that means a full view of this, even when you finally understand form at its manifested state, that is the tip of the iceberg, and form in its unmanifested state, the bulk of the iceberg, then you truly understand. And Swami Shardananda, for instance, or teacher of our teacher, said that will be grounds for enlightenment. That will lead you to enlightenment. So why people aren't getting enlightened, there's a very big reason for it here cosmologically, is because they're not understanding formlessness in both its designations. That is, formless form and ultimate formlessness. So the subtle state is not being acknowledged. Our subtle body is not being utilized consciously. The subtle tattvas are not being seen, the 12 spandhas that are beyond the 24 cosmic principles. We'll have teachings on that 2 or 3 weeks from now when we talk about worship of Shiva and Shakti in that class series. So in that way then we come upon a way of understanding this bulk of the iceberg that's under the water of our own everyday consciousness. So I told you the story about this. I've been teaching this same Vedantic truth in prisons for over a decade, and going into minimum, medium, and even occasionally maximum security prisons and talking to people about their true nature. Because the Atman is equal in quantity and in quality in all beings, from the highest high-minded to the lowest wretch. Same Atman. That's why Swami Vivekananda said, I don't care for humility. My vision, my ideal is samadarshitvam, sameness of everything. The same Atman in everyone. The manifestation of it's different. So not to be impractical about it or to overlook what is rational. But the same Atman is there with different coverings. That is, the coverings might be denser or thinner. The thinner the cloud, the more sun gets through. The thicker the cloud bank, he said, the less sun gets through. So in some beings, that's a very thick cloud bank between them and their Atman, or their Buddha nature, or their true nature. So you're trying to look for a sunny day, at least a partially sunny day. Today, glorious in Hawaii, you see. Here we have beautiful Mauna Kea out there, formed by Madame Pele, you see. And we've even got our own Himalaya now, see. Goddess of Hawaii named Poliahu, the goddess of snow, is with us today. She's covered the very peaks of our 14,000 plus Mauna Kea that I'm looking out right out the window there. So we have our own Himalaya, and we have the goddess of snow, Saraswati, in her Hawaiian form, covering that precipitous ascent to the summit, the highest reaches. So we want to get to a sunlit day so we can see that. Clouds, we won't see it, we won't know anything. So thinning out of the clouds is done by sadhana. Any kind of spiritual practice, dharma drops in your bucket, Lord Buddha said, will help the thinning process. The curtain of nations will thin, and you'll be able to see more and more of that light, live more and more in that light. So in that regard, with metaphors, we discuss how these 3 aspects of form, formlessness, and highest or absolute formlessness have to be known. And if you're only living in form, and you have some distant, vague conception of the highest formlessness, that's one thing. But if you're only living in form, and you're trying for the highest pinnacle of formlessness, but you don't know all the kingdoms of heaven between, all the lokas, all the bardos, all the akashas. Akashas means like different realms inside of each other, like 5 Russian dolls, which we will look at too, to hammer forth this point that we need to contemplate on. We need to go somewhere and sit like they did, under a tree, near the ocean, on the beach, up in the heights of the mountain, and think about this without any assistance from anyone, anywhere. See, I already got the teachings from the Dharma and from my teacher. Now I have to go and just ponder it till it becomes a part of my own knowledge again. I can clear the clouds away from my own consciousness. Thank you very much. here at Christmas time, Christmas Eve tonight, you see, remember Swami Sheshananda saying, why would I want anyone to shed their blood for me? I'll shed my own blood. I'll suffer for my own karma. Thank you very much. So for some beings, maybe a necessity that the last ditch effort is some hope that they might come out of their suffering. That's a predicament they fell in because of karma, and they're going to have to work their way out. If you can't punch your way out of a wet paper bag, you better start working on your muscles a little. And at least accomplish that small feat first, and then come out of yourself into this great light of consciousness and see the magnificent views of formlessness. The kings of heaven are very beautiful. My Father's mansion has many chambers, Jesus said. They're all sojourning places. You usually hear my Father's mansion has many chambers, but you don't hear what he said after that. They are sojourning places of action, of rest, and of refuge. So basically, they're realms of form. They're realms of movement. If you know the Advaita Vedanta, you know that Brahman belies changefulness. And Brahman does not accept movement or thought. Those things don't exist in Brahman. Your ever-stationary self, fixed in one place, which happens to have the ability to see everything at once, all pervasiveness. It's everywhere, at all times, so it's beyond time. How does Brahman get beyond time and space, would be the alternate way of asking that. The statement is Brahman is beyond time and space. And if it wants to see, it takes on 4 feet. You know that teaching? The 4 feet of Brahman? Brahmapada, it's called. We have a song about it. So Brahman takes on 4 feet. It's called, it's all-pervasive nature, deep sleep, dreaming, and waking. Those are the 4 feet of Brahman planted in the realms of form, so that it can see what's going on here, as it were. And that's how you explain omniscience, or omnipresence, or omnipotence, the 3 ohms I like to call them in English, and know the all-pervasive nature of Brahman, which is your very self. You too are that far-seeing, that all-knowing. All knowledge lies within you is one of the rules of yoga, one of the laws of yoga. So what is it that's keeping me from understanding this and realizing it and taking advantage of it and benefiting myself and all other beings by its knowledge? Those things must be renounced, not the things you'd usually think of to renounce. It's whatever's inhibiting my view of highest Brahman and the ability to help others with it. Those things I must renounce. And that would be the mature renunciate we're talking about. Immature renunciation is not a bad thing. It's a few steps inward. But to go full distance, you're going to have to transcend these realms of subtle form. So to know about them would be, number 1, seeing through your fear of them, so fear would go away. Number 2, not doubting them anymore, so your doubt would go away. And number 3, you're not ignorant anymore. Oh, let's see, fear, doubt, and ignorance. What does that sound like? The curtain of nescience. Lord Shiva says, the curtain of nescience, the cloud of unknowing that falls over people's inner vision, is made up of 3 things. It'd be like having a curtain with 3 colors in it. And then you have to start dyeing it, see, to make it transparent again. So it has fear, it has doubt, and it has ignorance in it. So to do away with those things would be the result of your spiritual practice. And then you'd get whatever realization is due to you accordingly, according to that capacity of your practice. And then you turn and help other beings with it. And then Vedantas go hand in hand to the goal. Some paths, they go singular, solo to the goal. But Vedantas go hand in hand to the goal is a very powerful statement by my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj. May bliss be upon him always. So coming to know what unmanifested Prakriti is, in Samkhya they call that pradhana. It's a Sanskrit word of great interest. So you'd say Purusha and pradhana were the 2 principles. Very much like Vedanta and Maya in Vedanta, right? That is, Brahman and Maya and Vedanta. So you have Brahman and this Maya in Vedanta. And in Samkhya you had Purusha and Pradhana, or Prakriti. So Pradhana, is it the same as in Brahman and Maya? There's two differences. In Brahman and Maya is dependent on Brahman for its existence in Vedanta, but not in Samkhya. These are two different realities. And that caused a problem to philosophers in India later. That is, non-dual philosophers. Sorry, we can't think of two realities. They contradict each other. There's only got to be one reality. So it must be that this is the apparent and this was the real, and one came out of the other. So whatever the case may be, and without getting into philosophical dispute, which is millennia old, and not really all that productive, although if you can do it with discernment, it can be helpful to you to understand that there is a difference between Pradhana and Purusha ultimately. Pradhana has its own existence and it's not dependent upon Purusha. It's its own independent principle. Well, if you want to start out looking at it that way, I'd say again that's a good step to it. Because it does seem to us that we are one thing and nature is another. And it's an interesting statement, isn't it? It's both helpful and problematic at the same time. To look at myself as different from nature means that I separate myself from nature. And for the seer, that's a good thing. But for the ignorant person, it's not a good thing. Because then they begin to rule over nature, get it for its resources, pollute it, and try and own it, and so forth. Like trying to grab water in your hands or keep sand from flowing into a hole dug on the beach. It's not going to happen. So, but for the realized soul, it's good to make that separation. You see, that is the green mango story of Sri Ramakrishna, if you remember. When the mangoes ripened, coconut, the green coconut theory. So when the coconut is one thing, it's all one mass, you see. But when it gets ripe, it turns into 5 layers, including a little kernel that rattles around inside, which is your Atman. So everything has to ripen first in this coconut head you've got, you see. And it's got to turn into 5 layers. Oh, I see I have body, Manomaya Kosha. I have energy, Pranamaya Kosha. I have mind, Manomaya Kosha. I have intelligence, Vijnanamaya Kosha. And I have an ego, Anandamaya Kosha. You see, the ignorant person never goes that far. It just thinks everything is one, and it's mine. So that everything is one is a profound statement, but his understanding isn't profound. He doesn't know about the divisions of consciousness. The seer does know about the divisions of consciousness, so when he looks at them he says, oh, I see, I'm not any of them. How do you know? How can you know that you're not the body and the energy and mind and its thought if you don't know them? We ask, you see. How is that possible for you to make that kind of conclusion unless you know them and then know them to be unreal? Well, take that and put it on a very wide scope and you can see how the whole iceberg is unreal. Whether it's tip or bulk, you see. It's floating in the sky of awareness, for instance, the Paramakasha. You see, the Paramakasha means the supreme Akasha. Sri Ramakrishna said, all other Akashas float in that. Mahakasha, he called it. What's an Akasha? It's a level of space, just like these 5 things I just stated. You have a body, doesn't it float in physical space? And then you have energy, doesn't it float in etheric ether and so forth? You have to go inside to find these different levels of space and assign a name to them and come to know them and then say at the end, oh, I see, I'm beyond all of them. If I can think about them and denote them, then I must be a witness of them. That's what people don't jump to that conclusion. There are also midway philosophers, you see, that looked at this and didn't go the full distance with it. There are people who didn't care to, and then there are people who accomplished it. But those midway philosophers looked at it and went halfway with it and said, oh, I see all of these things. And I agree with the philosophers, there are different levels of my consciousness and so forth. But they didn't then take the final step and say, wait a minute, I'm the one that's looking at these. I just discovered them. There must be a witness in me. Therefore, I must be different from them. So, as these tattvas get finer and finer, you see, that is, all things, all worlds and all things and objects in potential, you begin to see the seeds for them, and they're all controlled by these three gunas of balance, restlessness, and inertia. This is what this is, you see. Cycles of gunas going on all the time. Actually, in an eternal time, that's illusory. Isn't that a lot to wrap your mind around? Time is eternal, yet it's illusory. That's Maya doing you that favor. Trying to flummox you further, but you might want to stand back from Maya and say, gee, I'm not that either, because I'm not all the things that are in Maya. I'm the formless sky of awareness that looks on. I'm also, could say, the sunlight of non-dual reality. Everything's floating in that. I can also say I am the Word, because in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, Jesus said. Nice to quote him here on Christmas Eve. And also, there's this highest form that the human mind can conceive of. If we want to talk about form and then formless form, again, look at it as waking and deep sleep, waking and dreaming, then we can go to this visionary level where Ishvar is, where we see the highest form possible, standing there with his arms wide open, loving us, and having the highest compassion upon us by ushering us through the Son to the Father. It doesn't say, come here, my children, stay with me. Like Holy Mother said, oh, you don't like it here? My sons, my daughters? Well, then come with me. You can come with me. You don't have to stay here. So she wants to usher you into the bliss of your own formless nature. She's a doorway from between form and highest formlessness called relative or intermediate formlessness. She stands there in a form herself. Shisharda Devi, He Mahamate. See, the great mother. So, in that way, Ishvara, or Ishvari I'm talking just now, is this Purusha or Brahman or ocean of consciousness. You see, the greatest form rests in that. So you're the ocean of consciousness, you're the Word that is out of which all things come, you're the sunlight of non-dual reality, and you're the sky of awareness, wrapped all in one, any way you want to look at it. That's your true nature. That's what the seers have realized about their true nature, and they want to share that with you, so that fear, doubt, and ignorance will go away, and so that you will have the experience of non-dual reality, and then you can turn and share it with others. Sri Ramakrishna said, and here in Hawaii, where we have the best mangoes in the world, we'll probably get some emails about that from other parts of the world, but Sri Ramakrishna used to say, some Paramhamsas, you knock on their door, and they are back eating mangoes somewhere in a back room. So they'll wipe all traces of mango off their face and wash their hands and then come and open the door. Other Paramhamsas will just come with strands of mango hanging out of their teeth and sticky sweet juices on their hands, shake their hand, and won't try and hide the fact that they're enjoying mangoes. So the seers are like that, he said. These great Paramhamsas want to share it with everyone who will come. And those who have the ear to listen and the eye to see. Because they have the tongue to speak about it. They're speaking in tongues is, in our tradition, is something very profound. Actually, you'd probably call it speaking in tongue, because they have mastered the Dharma and the speech by which the Dharma is communicated in Sanskrit, and then they can tell you about it and awaken great power in you. Awakening of power. My teacher used to give that lecture once every year or two. We even transcribed it, and put it into one of our nectar journals, the awakening of power. So that's going to happen. Divine Mother will visit you, see. Just like out there in the mountain, we're seeing the Goddess of White today. They see the Goddess of White inside too. Vani Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampari Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Pralayamam Ani Saraswati Vagdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampa. So she's the goddess of light. One day I walked out of my drab-colored ski lodge room, walked out on the slopes of Mount Hood when I was a young boy, and looked up and I said, oh, I see, the goddess is white today. See, manifesting as light everywhere. Then I went and skied on her, and had the experience of Shukla Devi. Shukla means the all-white goddess. She wears a white robe. She sits on a white lotus. Her teeth are shining white, dazzling white. Her countenance is the pure white light of awareness. Her swan she sits on as a vehicle is white. Her master, her lord, Shiva, is white, smeared with the ashes that are white. She's all Sarva Shukla. She's the goddess of white. Or Poliahu, we call her here in Hawaii. So, these teachings then about your true nature, I bring them forward first in this chart because this is formlessness with a capital F. So we're going through these classes and you might say, well, Babaji, you're not speaking very much about the highest reality, formlessness. You keep speaking about form and formlessness that's seed. You see, that's like the subtle worlds within you where you're having heavens and dream worlds and so forth. Well, number one, in my defense, I have to say it's because you can't really speak about formlessness. It's not describable. It's indescribable. So I have some good defense there. Secondly is that I'm indicating it. Remember the story of Buddha pointing to the moon? It's a famous story in Buddhism. And then everyone looked at his finger. They didn't look at the moon. And one of the devotees among them evidently saw the point. You see, you looked at the moon. But it means you don't look at the personality. You look at where the personality is pointing. Because all forms are dissolvable in Brahman. In this case, in Buddha nature. In the Buddhists, it's even more strict than the Vedantists are about formlessness. The ego is not only just unreal, it doesn't exist in the first place. You don't have a personality that lives from lifetime to lifetime. They want to pretty much just do that with every personality, including the Buddha. Some forms of Buddhism are a little bit more friendly, of course, but that's why that horrible expression, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him, that means basically you're not really seeing the Buddha. Yeah. So for the realized soul, or for the practitioner, it would have to be like John. See, no man has seen God with his eyes here. You can't see God. It doesn't take a form. So this is a very staunch position and a very strict warning or caution for the soul not to fall into the trap of thinking that Ishwara in heaven is the ultimate goal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said you get to the Father through the Son. You take a guru, you take a guide, you take an ideal, and then you cut yourself in the image, right? Because if you can cut yourself in the image of that highest ideal, then you too will see inward and outward. Shiva Yoga and Vishnu Yoga, we call it in India. Vishnu Yoga is, Vishnu's got his eyes half closed and sitting there. So he's seeing inward and he's also seeing outward at the same time. Shiva said, hell with that. I'm just going to see inward. So he closes his eyes completely. So one is a transcendent yoga, and the other is a yoga that takes stock in both and maybe even invests in outer life and inner life both, is there for all beings. If you take Shiva for your ideal, then your ideal is going to be take a canoe to that distant island, and when you get there, burn it. You don't have any idea of coming back anymore. You've made your final conclusion, and you're resolute about it. You say, I'm done with form. I have students that tell me that. Most of them are from India, but nevertheless they say it. No children for us, and no coming back to this life again. We're absolutely, as a couple, both sure of that. So that's very, I'd say, very powerful, and also very impressive in many ways, because people who know without a doubt that formlessness with a capital F, sky of awareness, non-dual reality, the Word that was with God and was God, and finally Purusha or Brahman, your own Atman, or that ocean of consciousness, there can be no other conclusion than that. And that until you see and have the vision of formless reality, all of this is still peppered with doubt as to its reality, as to its benefit. If you're a desert wandering yogi, see, and you get your own vision out there of God, so what? It's been done thousands of times by thousands of other people. Did it benefit anyone? There's doubt about that. Come back out of the desert and speak to someone, it'll benefit someone. So the highest beings we've always thought of people who could go in and out, up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, like Sri Aurobindo once said, and take on form and give it up without the slightest attachment to it. So giving it up in a transcendent way and merging completely, that's called Videha, that's called Videha Mukti. I don't have any more bodies. Videha, there's no more, I'm not taking any bodies. Any bodies mean not bodies made of stone or wood, not bodies made of flesh and bone, not bodies made of wise thinking, conceptualization, as the Buddha said, in the Dhammapada. So giving up all bodies and not coming back again. I saw the world once, that was all it took. Oh yes, nice place to visit, don't want to live there. But very, very adept souls, Jivanmuktas, have to come back. Bodhisattvas have to come back. And part of the reason they'll come back is to test their mastery of adamancy about Brahman being formless, about Buddha nature being the ultimate, about Allah being all there is, about the Almighty Father being formless. So that has to be considered too on this level of the different designations of, or conditions or levels of consciousness. So we've gone all around this chart. We've also quoted from the middle. All things outside is although infinite, is finite in nature. All that is inside is infinite. From the inside, from within, the outside has come. See? And being infinite, everything is infinite. So you can look at flowers and trees and rivers and canyons and so forth, and you could say beautiful, nature is wonderful. It even appears to be a separate reality. It's certainly got a presence called a tip that we're all seeing here. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg. You know, intellect, ego, mind, the subtle elements, the subtle senses, the gross elements, all of this is at the tip of the iceberg for us to see. And it's going to be, you might say, it'd be hard to see your intellect. See? Well, I can see you're intellectual. I see you've got some smarts there, but where is your intellect? You see? Where's your intelligence? But you wouldn't say that amongst a group of knowers of Brahman. Their intellect is shining off them like a light, like an aura, like ojas, like tejas. And everything they're speaking is coming from that light. You never hear them say anything that isn't coming from that light. Even their jokes, even their everyday conversation is coming from that light of intelligence. If they're conditioned by anything, they're conditioned by that. It's a last conditioning. And it's a nice condition to be in. There are other conditions you don't want to be in, like ignorance. So in that case, then, you can see all of these are seen as the tip of the iceberg. That's Prakriti in its manifested state. And as it leans left, then basically it becomes things that begin to disappear from outer view. Mind, intellect, thought, the ego, very interior. That's getting into the realm of formless form. And finally, the Mahat, the great Mahat itself. That is basically when you sing Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So that's the Mahat. See, the great mind, the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, whom we pay our obeisances to. They would be much like Ishvara. Ishvara, of course, comes out of them as an even subtler principle. But that's the last vestiges of form the aspiring human mind will be aware of as its hailstone melts into the ocean of Brahman. In the meantime, what you need to know is samcharaha prati samcharaha, isn't it? There's a chain of evolution, evolutes outward, right on down to air, earth, fire, water, and ether. I should have put those in the opposite way. Ether, air, fire, water, and earth, from finer to subtler, finer to grosser. But then there's a reverse chain of revolutes back inward. He didn't leave us hanging, like science did, and the evolutionist theory. Didn't leave us hanging out here in space with nowhere to go, without knowing what the kingdom of heaven is, without ever experiencing our true nature instead of our apparent nature, body. Body ego is like a great vice. It's like a sandwich. It's about to be eaten. And in between are ego, mind, and prana. So the two poles of the non-self are the body and the ego. And the ego floats in a very refined space of its own, a self-predicated world of its own, and controls everything like from inside of a chariot. Five horses, the reins are prana, and the chariot's the mind. You see, but to forgot his own self is really not the ego at all. It's the Purusha that will stop the chariot, go in there, kick the ego out, and take off on the chariot. See, master itself again. So that's all happening on degrees of form, subtle form or formlessness with a small f, and ultimate formlessness. Realize your true nature. So as it comes around here, you can see this arrow is always cycling, thanks to the three gunas. Lord Brahma and the great mind are there, so beings are always going back in this way. And when they go into death, they're experiencing the realm of formless matter. Everything that's in potential. So here's your deep sleep state. See? Everything went back into seeds and you didn't know it. When you woke up again, you forgot to account for it. And you didn't ask, why did I wake up? What's operating the show here? Your ego with its desire for embodiment. That's what's operating the show. You never thought once to yourself, the true self is beyond matter. It's beyond senses. It's beyond objects. It's beyond even thinking process. Brahman is not matter, energy, or thought. One of the best statements I've had to come up with in my own mind about what Brahman is not. You want to practice neti neti? Cut to the chase. Brahman is not matter, is not energy, and it's not thought. So then what is it? It's pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless, indivisible, eternal, all-pervasive. We start borrowing nice words from the English dictionary to try and explain it as best as words can say. Until we get to the word, and then we don't need to speak anymore. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the glass is half full, you fill it, it gurgles, bubbles. But when the glass is full, you see, it's not making any sound anymore. So when you experience the nature of the word and take it inside and realize it, you stop bubbling, you stop gurgling. So until then, there is the idea that you could actually empty the glass and fill it again, empty the glass and fill it again. I would rather use that in a more enlightened sense, metaphor, meaning that there are sages and seers full of peace who come to the earth again and they come empty and they fill themselves up again with Dharma and with people's sufferings. And they show them how to become full and empty themselves again and fill themselves again. But if you use that in the station of non-enlightenment or ignorance, the people are coming back in rebirth all the time, filling themselves up with nonsense. And Silence to them means death, when the tongue can't move anymore. That's not a condition you want to be in. Conditionless consciousness is where one is. The former, the latter is in conditioned awareness, like the 12 nidanas of Buddhism we've looked at. So there is a chain of transition. To put it in Lord Kapula's, this is his teaching, father of Samkhya Yoga, there is a chain of transition from unmanifested or non-evolved Prakriti to manifest Prakriti in its evolutes, ending in the grossest evolute, earth. There is also a reverse transition of evolutes, ending in dissolution into unmanifested Prakriti. So he's citing these two modes of Prakriti, pradhana. See? And then he will say something about the Purusha. You see, let's go up here for that. Prakriti is the equilibrium of the three gunas, not evolved from any other origin, being the primordial source of all evolutes. A greater amount of Prakriti is unmanifested. That we don't know. Our word for nature just means 5 elements out here, objects, nature, bodies, and so forth. In fact, we don't even usually think of our bodies as nature, do we? Think of them as us. But that aside for now, so we don't break into hilarity and not be able to finish this class. Such a simple, silly notion as that. He goes on to say, Purusha, the sentient conscious principle, is ever wise, ever pure, and ever free. So, making the sharp distinction between the sentient and the insentient. And I said that's where you can allow the idea that there are two realities. It's not something to debate about in philosophical circles. It's something to understand that in the earliest time, Lord Kapila was making this division between the 24 cosmic principles and your true self. Does it sound like he thought that there was two realities? Purusha, what later philosophers came to decide about this is that pranamadaha pranamidam, that the outside has come from the inside, and they're both infinite, because beyond inside and outside is the infinite Brahman, and everything has to be held in the infinite Brahman. What about suffering? What about death? What about all of those horrible things that are happening out there, people would ask. And Sri Ramakrishna would say, well, I'm sorry, the snake has poison. Brahman is the snake, and the poison is, all these sufferings and everything is the poison existing in the snake. But notice one thing, please, sir, he would say, how the snake is not affected by its own poison. It does not die because of the presence of poison in it, but you might if you get bit by it. So that Maya that is in Brahman as the poison in the snake, which the snake is not affected by, you don't want any part of that. Except to know that it's in Brahman. Because if you really look at it closely, suffering and all these horrible events wake people up to a higher reality. It's not the best, nicest way to put it, but we're not here to be nice. I've not come to give my manners a polish, Swami Vivekananda said amongst the Westerners. I've come to show them that they're all babies, spiritually speaking, and they have to submit to be taught. They're children. So he's coming here and saying all these phenomena that are going on, all these events, these horrible things that are happening to you have been happening from time out of mind in this world of Prakriti, manifested and unmanifested, because you have bad dreams too, and bad things in the world come out of your bad dreams. So he's come to tell you that these are experiences of awakening. These are the realizations you must have in order to shape yourself in what he called the gymnasium of the world. You must forge your soul in the furnace of the world, he said, and be strong so that no matter what happens outwardly, it doesn't affect the inwardly, just like the poison doesn't affect the snake. So take a snake as your ideal. Meditate on that. That's an alambana. I mean, that's a very powerful alambana. And it doesn't matter whether the snake's the devil or the snake's Kundalini Shakti. It's still helpful to you to meditate on it. All is Brahman. Sorry, can't get beyond that one. So take the unreal and the real, and take the negative and the positive. They're all dualities, aren't they? Render them into one state, meditate on them, pass your time contentedly, and be free. Did it say anything other than that? Did it say, take the negative and the positive and cry tears about the negative? Brood all day because things aren't right in your world? Be depressed because you can't fix them? Did it say that in the sloka? Did it say that in the whole scripture? It said to transcend. Purify and transcend, it said. And here's how you do it. It gave you the methods too. If you haven't used the methods and applied them, it's not the world's fault, it's not God's fault. And it's certainly not the devil's fault. The devil is in you. So it's your own business that you haven't faced up to the negativities of life, faced them off and faced them down and gained success and victory over them. Jai. Jai Shri Ramakrishna. What haven't we taken about this chart? I think we've looked at everything. So this whole cycle, round and round here we go. Where we stop, nobody knows, is a circus of this world. I could teach an interesting story about my teachers, that he and Swami Devatmananda and Swami, probably maybe Bhaskaraనంda was there, a few other Swamis, the Ramakrishna order, were in Portland where Swami Sheshananda Center was, and there was a place called Jansen Park, and there was this huge, huge roller coaster there. And some nice merry-go-rounds and things. So some of the devotees took these swamis, Portland devotees took these swamis to that place called Jansen Beach, I think it was then, back then, not there anymore. And I saw this beautiful ride, you see, so all the devotees wanted to go on it. And they wanted the swamis to go really bad. So all the swamis were standing there, and come on, Kiran Maharaj, the name of my Swami, Swami Sheshanandaji, come on, let's go on this ride. He said, I've spent my whole life trying to get off the merry-go-round of the world. I'm not going on it now. See? So all these other Swamis got on and took this ride. And so they walked up and said, here, hold our coats. They draped the coats over Swami's arms. Hold the coats while they went on. So you can say, oh, well, he's very non-compromising, or he's a stick in the mud. With all the fun we could have had watching him on the merry-go-round. But back then, that's the way he concluded. And he was in his own town. We know when he was in Portland, he was an absolute taskmaster and the perfect example. When he left, he was a little boy laughing. I said they really were amazed to see him change as soon as he went over the Columbia River outside the Portland area. And he just felt free. But when he got back across there, he smiled. It's a smile. We just turned to the serious, okay, down to business again. And that was our beautiful Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj. We salute him here on Christmas Eve, because that's when the Ramakrishna order was founded, on Christmas Eve. In a little town that we visited in India on the way to Jairambati and Kamarpakur, called Antpur. And we've been there and taken the dust of that place, brought some home, put it in our altars, where those disciples got together and decided to renounce the world. I got an email yesterday from Ramakrishna Das. I hope you're watching. If you are in New England, he says, welcome, greetings from snowy, cold Connecticut, he said in his email. Then he said, he's a man of very few words now, and he's very sickly, and he's close to passing, I think. And he told me in a very short email, what is the meaning of Hrim? So he wanted to know what the powerful bija of Hrim was. And after he says, I'm seeing the boys get their robes. Mother is very close. Signed, Ramakrishna Das. Very beautiful email. I'm seeing the boys get their robes. You wouldn't have known what that means, that they're in Anandpur, and they started the order, and then after that, Ramakrishna had set aside these beautiful robes for the young men. So they were given to them. He knew about their future sannyas. So it's like my friend there, my student, Ramakrishna Das, is looking right past everything as if there were no time. And he was right there watching the boys get their orange robes, their ochre robes. So beautiful things happen in time, even though it's illusory. So around this wheel we go, you see. It would be like this kind of saying. The ebb and flow of time passes unnoticed. Life's experiences are spent in vain. At any time, death, the dissolver of name and form, may draw near and undo your life's work with one fatal blow. It is time to heed the mother's minstrel, who solemnly declares that repeating Kali's name destroys the illusion of death. Ramprasad then sings boldly and laughs. It is always best to chant Kali, Kali, Kali. So in some of these beautiful songs, by the dozens, this devotee of Mother Kali wrote that has been transliterated from the Sanskrit, actually from the Bengali, by our own founder, Lexicon, Ramakrishna Das Bal. And so these sentiments explain very nice what the philosophy is all about in a very short and sweet way. So we look at this. I didn't finish my story about teaching in prisons. Going back a few minutes to see that when I was in prisons teaching, I saw this image on the window of one of the officers, one of the administrators, you see, in the hallway. So I was walking down to the classroom and the prisoners were filing in. So I went up to the guard there and I said, can I have that image? He said, well, I'll make a call. So he called and he unlocked the door and went inside and pulled this off the window. It was a black and white, and gave it to me and said, this is okay, you can take this. We used it long enough. And they weren't using it, of course, for Samkhya philosophy. I don't know what they were using it for, but basically then I took it back and I looked on the internet and found a color version of it. There are many, many, many beautiful icebergs if you look them up. And because immediately when I saw it, I said, unmanifested Prakriti, the tip and the bulk of the iceberg, perfect. I can put so much on that chart. And I probably could have put a lot more, but this gets to the basic points of it. How to teach, just like I was saying, teaching with the 5 Russian dolls. It's how to teach children and adult children these things that we're missing in Western consciousness. Even right there alone, you see, we're missing. The involution theory is not a part of what we think about. If you're a Christian or religionist, dualist, fundamentalist and so forth, you have some idea about heaven. But you see so many of them going, oh Lord, please save us, and looking up. It would be very nice to see, like the Zen monk and so forth, who are looking in, you see. Pray to my own self, seated in my own heart. You know that beautiful Sanskrit phrase? Adihi sa samyoga namitta hetu kalas, trikala takala pi dustaha, tam vishvarupam, tavabhuta vidyam. Nice, thank you. Yes. So, that is, meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. That alone, just that one line of that, would be enough. See? Just meditate on the Lord. Seated in my heart? No. As thine own self seated in your heart. That is, I am that. There is no division between God and mankind. That's a line of demarcation that doesn't exist except in Maya. It doesn't exist in the mind of the realized soul. And unfortunately, it doesn't exist in the mind of the green coconut person either. They haven't made the distinctions yet between the layers of consciousness. So this is what we're doing in the West. We need to know the cosmology. Samkhya would be the choice, and yoga would be the practice, and Vedanta would be the realization. These are the three pillars. And of course, if you put in all the contents around them, hedge them nicely around with a goodly amount of Tantra and Buddhism and other salient philosophies of India, including Sikhism and Sufism and so forth, which also have a home in India, then you will have the full universal view that the Avatar has. That it's not that each path exists separately from one another. It's not that these paths should try and harmonize each other. It's that this is one path. And that's the way they see it. Just like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. One. One religion. Who broke it into 4 parts? The ignorant soul. Who fortified those divisions? The priest class. Who comes along and breaks down those divisions? Paramahamsa Sri Rama Krishna Paramahamsa Sri Rama Krishna Laho Pranam Namaskar. The great souls, the avatars, they see it as Sahaja Pratisiddhanta, Sahaja Tantra Siddhanta. They know that it's not a matter of unifying, because everything is already unified. There's one path, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti, the Rig Veda, the oldest scripture with the oldest statement about the natural unity of all things. There's one goal with many paths leading to it. One mountaintop, many ways to get up it. One rooftop, Sri Ramakrishna said, many ways to try and get up it. Ladder, rope, bamboo pole, or climb a tree and jump from a nearby branch. You can get on the roof by all those methods and more. Nowadays, helicopter will do. Okay, lower me a little lower. I'm going now. So that one universal view then is the one that we espouse. And it's very difficult to take that as your own resolved and decided conclusion, Vedanta Siddhanta, unless you know the underpinnings of the universe of name and form, and where it comes from as seeds. Enough said, I hope, then. Let's look over here to Lord Vashishta's way of saying this before we take our break. We can take a second chart, or at least part of it. And there you see basically the stainless cause of the universe. How much time do we have before our break, by the way?
12 minutes.
12 minutes. I may have enough time to give you the introduction here. You can see there, goddess in the middle. This is a painting by my good friend who has passed away. Actually, he passed away sitting just like this. And his name was Gary Dickens. He passed away in 2010 or something like that, maybe a little earlier. And he had painted a bunch of beautiful visionary paintings and had a deep darshan with these deities, evidently, and was able to paint them. So this one is one of his, and I use it for this chart called Stainless Cause of the Universe. The Tantricists might refer to this as Srishti Rahasya, what caused the universe of space and time to come out of this formless Brahman, and why did we do it in the first place, you see? Why did we even enter into this game, this play, this sport, this lila, this field of the Lord, this field of karma? well, that's a why question, and we know the problem with why questions. But still, a matter of self-inquiry has to come in. So those questions get answered eventually, which is why I was harping, as it were, or drumming in this teaching of manifested and unmanifested Prakriti. Here you see at an earlier time, Lord Vashishta was talking about it as the cause of the universe. This teaching came from Swayambhuva, who is, Sri Ram was the leader of his line. The solar line is called. The solar line gave birth to many spiritual sons, S-U-N as well as S-O-N. So out of this great solar line, Swayambhuva at the head, came these great souls. It's beautiful to think about that, especially if you're going to have children. You might want to renounce some things that aren't healthy and infuse yourself with piety and higher thoughts before you have the child. What a novel idea. Because basically you have children are coming from inside. I mean, this is another thing to ask about this. Are children just born in outer Prakriti? They don't have any beginning? They don't have a soul? Well, some people believe that. Other think that they had a soul and the stork dropped it off or something. So there's all sorts of ways of explaining this to your children, but nobody's telling your children the truth, that you are an eternal principle and that you took on a body. Let's find out why you did that and then transcend the need to be born again. And not have to go back to the ancestors in this kind of condition, constantly revolving on the wheel of birth and death. Because that's what it is, everyone. You're experiencing birth, life, and death in constant rounds. And not remembering it? How's that? The reason you are, the way you think, the way you act, the way you look, Sri Ramakrishna said, is because of the conditionings you picked up on this merry-go-round. So in that way, you're going to have to consider this very deeply if you're going to have children. So Swayambhuva obviously did. He gave birth to blazing sons of spirituality like Sri Ramchandra. We often sing to him, remember? Sri Ramchandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadanam Tava Tanchalo Chana Kancha Mukakara Kancha Parakandarana Sri Ram, Sri Ram, Sri Ram, Sri Ramchandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadanam. So we have a beautiful soul like Sri Ramchandra coming to us in the Treta Yuga in the company of Sita, Hanuman, Satrugya, Bharat, his brothers and half-brothers, and King, his father, and his three mothers maybe, Dasaratha, and others, all there as exponents of this solar line. And so one day the young Ram went to Vashishta, who was Dasaratha's chief priest in the court of that city, Kosala kingdom, and went there and said, what is the cause of this universe? That is, and so Vashishta said, better read than probably spoken, in the blissful darkness before dawn, which thoroughly inundated King Dasaratha's still sleeping city of Ayodhya, like Maya itself, all the subjects serving under the beneficent auspices of the noble solar line were either dreaming or fully absorbed in that unique state of deep sleep, where all name and form in its entirety gets effectively withdrawn into the primal cause. Only a few souls were stirring at this mystical moment, they being awake and moving about well before the advent of the sun's rays. Just the footfalls of an occasional priest or acolyte dressed in sacred white robes which were their only distinguishing mark amidst the void-like blackness around them, echoed down long, high, vaulted corridors, whose seemingly infinite reaches threatened to disappear to the eye of the beholder into the endless gloom stretching out ahead, above, and on all sides. Faint light from candles set in cold niches etched in stone walls, placed so far apart from one another that they offered scarce refuge from the darkness, cast weird projections that danced devilishly on alabaster walls, shadowy Asuric beings, teasing and plaguing the imagination of those venturing forth at such early an hour. The temple grounds were still. Not even an early morning ritual were being enacted yet, what to speak of procuring of their necessary essentials. The single resolution on the minds of those few who were awake at this hour was that of in-depth meditation on the beloved Lord of the universe, whose infinite wealth and territories outstripped even the redolent lands and vast riches of the Kosala kingdom, wherein resided the descendants of the solar dynasty. In their innermost chamber of the temple, amidst a host of well-attended deities, a few of those dedicated individuals sat, meditating in mute silence, ghee-wick lamps shedding the only exterior light to be had, but consciousness itself providing an inner radiance incomparable to all other lights and earthly glares. Among those singularly adept meditators sat Lord Vashishta, always to be found at this hour in his usual place of honor, but so indrawn as to have forgotten any kind of praise or award afforded him by the society of priests and men. Spotting this hoary figure in the soft light, Sri Ramchandra, son of King Dasaratha, prince of Ayodhya, youth extraordinaire, and the as yet unveiled avatar of the age, just recently arrived at the temple from the castle of his father, entered the meditation hall of the marvelous temple compound. His intention was to sit formally for an hour until the great rishi had finished his morning practice, and then meet with the venerable sage for profound teachings promised him the day before. As the morning session broke up, with this and that mystic figure quietly stirring, standing, and moving off into the surrounding darkness, the venerable old rishi also broke his concentration, or rather changed it to another of its many flexible modes, and rising slowly and with reverent salutations to the deities before him, headed for an adjoining chamber where he would wash and prepare for the duties of the day before him. Seeing the Lord emerge from his chamber after a time and motioning to him accordingly, the young teenage Ram saluted the deities rather too quickly and followed the sage at a distance into the legendary courtyard outside. In the gloaming of the dawn, prismatic light had already begun streaming from the far-off horizons as the two unique souls found their seat on one of the ancient pedestals dotting the temple gardens. In this peaceful but magisterial setting, the two most prominent figures of that time, enacting the roles of preceptor and student, commenced with their historical and world-transforming communion that had been ongoing for weeks now. The great King Ikshvaku, began the rishi, wasting no time, whose name implies the possession of 10 auspicious chariots, was the first king of your line, Ram, and very intelligent. Such was his diligence and spiritual skill that, on top of his royal station and earthly attainments, he managed to attain both jnanam and moksha, wisdom and liberation. It was due to the possession of this tremendous sweep of inner knowledge that he often kept communion only with his own inner self, using his adroit and flexible mind to fathom what would be considered by most to be unanswerable questions. One day, my prince, the great Ikshvaku came upon a question that, in conjunction with the inscrutable presence of Maya and the sea of universal suffering, threw his mind into doubt. Unable to find the answer he wanted, he resolved therefore to consult Svayambhuva Manu, the original Manu, who, upon being propitiated by this great soul, promptly descended from Satya Loka and granted Ikshvaku divine darshan. So out of his own self came this grandsire of his to answer his question in formless form, took on a form. After worshipping the sacred personage fittingly, the sage king posited his question for the Manu's consideration. Revered Sir, stated Ixvaku, I know that you will always and ever deign to advise me only for my highest good. Therefore I have come to consult you about the nature of the universe appearing here, before and around us. From where has it come? What is its origin? What is its cause? And how long is its duration? Whence came this universe? And after the break, we will take up that question and how Swayambhuvamana answered that question. Here we will take our break then for 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you for your kind attentions. We welcome you to the second half of the third class on form and formlessness, a very beautiful subject and deep and profound if you look at it in the depth that we're looking at it through the eyes of Samkhya Yoga, Buddhism, Vedanta, and Yoga Vashishta's eyes too, in his beautiful line of starting with Swayambhuva all the way down to Ikshvaku, the owner of 10 chariots, I think it means, something like that. So these great beings who lived and are still mentioned in history, even though thousands of years before Christ. And the way that those descriptions are put down shows just an abundance of wisdom, linguistics, spirituality. It's amazing. Without all technology around them, practically partially because of not having it around them, all this attention they put on the purpose for human existence and the source of everything, the cause of the universe. I should probably put here, it would mean the causeless cause, because there's a beautiful saying in Vedanta that says, Brahman cannot be the cause of anything. So when you're looking inside for origins to things, and you're going to have to examine causes and effects, then you're going to have to go back to the Word. When Jesus talked about origins, in the beginning was the Word, he was talking about Om, or what the equivalent of that would be in Christian speak. But the real important idea behind it is that beyond all origins was the Almighty Father. And he knew that because he had the experience of oneness with it, Advaita, in that soul, Jesus' soul. And then we can, of course, understand through the sayings of Jesus, again here speaking on Christmas Eve, that India had that ideology from many, many centuries and even millennia prior to Judaism and Christianity's manifestation. So we see that Om, or the Word, was not just in the beginning, but it was with God, and then it was God. So when the two merged, or those three things merged, you had what was beyond origins. So Brahman was beyond origins, or Almighty Father, and so it cannot be called the cause for anything. Much like the story of vegetables dancing in hot water. You think the cause is the hot water, but it's not, it's the heat. And then you think it's the heat, but no, it's the burner. Then you think it's the burner, but no, it's actually the electricity coming underneath the floor. Oh, it's not that either, it's the station where the electricity is generated. So you're looking for this cause way back inside for not just vegetables dancing in a pot, although that's also connected, but to the self, or to the cause of the universe. So when Ikshvaku had this question that was a doubt, which we were just reading about here, he had a combination of jnanam and mastery over life, as Yoga Vashishta, this great scripture, said. Yet he had a doubt come up about the beginning of all these things, and therefore the sufferings that were in it, and the poison in the snake, as we were talking about. And so he went inside, very beautiful and indicative of the inner faith of that era of life, that we should call it yuga. And he thought about Swayambhuvamana, the head of his line, and Swayambhuvamana heard him, heard his thought, and gave him darshan. And this is quite common in India. It's not a miracle, it's not something uncommon. This is actually the way they think about it, because they know about inner worlds. And they know about unmanifested prakriti other than just prakriti. And so you might say Swayambhuvamana was keeping a subtle form in manifested prakriti, and so that he could hear his great-great-great-grandson speak to him and ask him this question, and then come down levels of consciousness and give him a darshan in his mind. He saw his great-great-great-grandfather's form and had a conversation with him in there. Just like you might have a conversation with someone in a dream tonight. Maybe someone you don't know, some great hoary sage comes and speaks to you, and you wake up and say, that was amazing. You see, well, you were in the kingdoms of heaven, and then you came back out into the king of hell. Oh, I'm sorry, earth. And so this is inner and outer movement of consciousness. There's a chain of evolutes out, there's a chain of evolutes back in. If you know the evolutes, you can use them as handholds to get back in. It's like seeds, and it's also like connecting the dots, and it's also like breadcrumbs that you strew yourself as you were coming out, and you wanted to get back in. And hopefully the little birds of forgetfulness, as I like to say, did not peck those breadcrumbs while you were living a lifetime, or during that lifetime, so that you could find your wealth back in. It's just knowing the evolutes, 24 of them according to Lord Kapila, Lord Samkhya I was about to say, helps you have these handholds to go back in and meet these people, meet these souls who are dwelling back in subtle bodies or causal bodies in deep sleep. They're holding a form, just like you might want to when you pass away. Oh, I think I might want to keep some connection to the earth. That thought alone means that you have the ability to do so. And if that's a desire-based ability, that's not good. See, because you're going to be drawn out like a mongoose is pulled out of its hole in the wall by a brick the kids happen to tie on its tail, so it can never get free. Back down from heaven to earth it's pulled, or from whatever lower heaven it might be at, as Sri Ramakrishna said in his metaphor. But if that is not based in desires, based on the desire to do good to others, or to sport in consciousness, or to further perfect your yoga in the world, in the gymnasium of the world, that's different. That's a positive sankalpa, and the seers will give you that. Say, okay, if you want to do that, just be very careful, see, with the power of your awakened Shakti. Be careful of that. Never forget her, see, as you venture around and play in the fields of the Lord. So all of this coming from this teaching that Brahman cannot be the cause of anything. It's a causeless cause at best. If you want to go back to that quote that we had in the first half, Adihi sa samyoga nimitta hetu paras trikala dakalapi distaha tam vishvarupam bhavabhuta midyam. All of that is saying basically that you should meditate on the self as your own, the Lord as your own self seated in your heart. That's not the anatomical heart, that's the heart of Kundalini, the chakra heart, inner realm of love, pure love for God. And then come to know it, perceive it as the subtle cause between the relationship between matter and spirit. So it's there like that heat in the water coming from someplace you don't know that actually gives the relationship between matter and spirit its time in the sun, its ability to shine, to exist, like waves on an ocean. The wind decides not to blow. I don't have any waves anymore, you see. So mind decides not to think. No more life. Just back to eternal life. And in that way then, having a darshan with his great-great-great-great-grandfather, Swayambhuva Mana, we read about that, and then had that question where he asks, whence came this universe? From the story of Ikshvaku in Yoga Vishishta. That's the scripture. And this is, of course, available in several versions. One here in SRV. I think the Theosophical Society put out one, and Swami Bhaskaranan in Seattle also has a version of condensed version. This is already a condensed version of a condensed version. Is you couldn't put the original Yoga Vishishta in a book and be able to pick it up. It's has never been all translated into English. So the essence of it, that's called the Laghu Yoga Vishishta, has been brought out with the essential stories and the essential teachings. And then, of course, I have ventured to put out my own transliteration of it in English. That's what you heard at the end of the first half. So let's see what he says. I won't read as long as I did because I'm not known for reading in my classes. You can do that on your own. But let's see briefly what he said to answer that question from his great-great-great-grandson, as it were. So he says, whence came this universe? Let's see, from the quiet place here. This is then the conclusion of the Nirvana Prakarana. And seem to have lost my place. That's not good, is it? Uh-huh. Whence came this universe? Stages of lower and upper knowledge, rebirth due to desire. Coming across a lot of nice teachings here, but not the one I'm looking for. 7 stages of true knowledge. There we are. Ah, thank you. Mother has shown me the way. Now, Revered Sir, stated Ikshvaku directly, I know that you will always and never advise me. Remember you said that. So tell me, what is the cause, how long is its duration, and whence came this universe? This is an excellent host of questions, said Wise King, said Swayambhuva, for the acquisition of their answers will destroy Maya for all time. That's what I was saying earlier. And at the break we were talking about that too. Basically, if you know this chain of effects outward and the tattvas that are involved in it, the consciousness that powers it, and you can move back in, this will destroy Maya's hold on you. You'll be the witness of Maya then, not its victim. Actually, like a fantastic city of celestial beings imagined in the clouds, this universe of name and form in time and space does not truly exist. Not in the sense of an absolute existence. That is, when these changing realms and all that lies within them dissolve in time, and even time is lost track of in endless infinity, all that remains is Atman, the radiant reality, shining ever in the translucent light of its own pure and immutable consciousness. It is the subtlemost of all akashas, which come out of it like bhutakasha, pranakasha, chittakasha, etc. We were mentioning those in the first half too. They all shine in it like objects in a mirror. Let me explain this further, but from the perspective of the universe and its appearance, rather than from the Atman, which is transcendent of all phenomena. So he moves through a series of teachings and tells Ikshvaku that all of this is existing as jnana wisdom projected by the mind in that one primal akasha. So here you have a representation of everything he says in a chart. That is, I took out of that chapter of the Nirvana Prakarana this description and put it in this order. So there's the all-pervasive Brahman, there's the egg, you might call it Hiranyagarbha, or the cosmic egg, or Om, or Mahat, or the Trinity. There are different names for this penultimate source of things. I said Brahman can't be the cause of anything. So Brahman Shakti, which you see appears first. And there you see Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Drovya Shakti. Those are these 4 smaller bubbles, and then even smaller ones attached to it, which are called potent Shaktis and many other minor Shaktis commingling. So many powers are coming out of that Mahashakti, that great mother. These are called her 4 arms sometimes. The Icha Shakti means will, Jnana Shakti means wisdom, Kriya Shakti means spontaneous action, and Dravya Shakti means the producer of substances. So that in seed form, in the mind of Shakti then, is the word, and out of the word she can produce substances like earth, air, fire, water, ether. But they start off as ideas. And that's in the causal and subtle state of your mind. Those ideas are there in deep sleep, for instance. Those are seeds. Everything happens by seeds. I told you at the first half that my student and disciple from New England wrote me and said, "What's the meaning of Hrim?" was the one question he had in his email from snowy Connecticut. See? And I wrote him back and said, Ha, Ra, Im. It's in the four paltas or sections of the word, which pretty much mean waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and what's beyond them. Or gross body, subtle body, causal body, and the ultimate. Or in terms of consciousness, gross, subtle, causal, and transcendent. Ha, Ra, I, Im. Divine Mother herself explains that in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, in her own scripture. Huge, voluminous scripture all about Divine Mother. So those four Shaktis are mentioned then, and even have been taken by Vedanta philosophy. It's very beautiful, you see. They were there in the very beginning in Lord Vasishta's time. This is back when Sri Ram was a teenager. That's back before Krishna. So this is a very, very ancient time period, or yuga. Of course, yugas are all going like this, and the one eternal moment's holding them. Just like this is all going like this, and the sky of awareness is holding it, right? So there's one indeterminable, undisplaceable, all-pervasive, unchanging, immutable, that is, reality that holds all things that move. And this is your consciousness. Your consciousness without sublation, your consciousness without conditioning, your consciousness without form, even without subtle form. And that's the all-pervasive reality, or the light of Brahman, if you want to call it that. And all forms will appear in that, and disappear, and appear and disappear, like bubbles in an ocean. But Ram Prasad is certain, he sings in one of his songs, that all opinions are devoid of substance. We will be in the beginning, in the end, what we were in the beginning. Bubbles rising in Mother's ocean of consciousness. Bubbles rising and dissolving in Mother's ocean of consciousness. Beautiful conclusion by a mere minstrel of Mother's wisdom. All opinions devoid of substance. Like we'll become wandering spooks or ghosts, or that there's some akasha in a jar and it's also outside the jar, the philosophical way of putting it. These are all devoid of substance. They're not the ultimate answer. The ultimate answer is that we will be in the end what we are in the beginning. Bubbles rising and dissolving in Mother's infinite ocean of consciousness. So when you take on a form, it's... See, then how many times are you going to do that? Or how many times do you want to do that? You are the ocean. The bubble doesn't ever say, I'm the ocean. I'm this little bit of trapped air, doesn't it? The wave never says, I'm the ocean. It says, I am a wave. But a more wiser wave would say, I am water. Because then there's a connection to the ocean. You see, most beings are waves. Swami Vivekananda explains. So they're neither water nor ocean. They're just waves, rising and falling continually. This is the way they think. And you think what you think you are. So then go to the next level, the wave that comes out and says, I don't think I'm a wave. That's old news, you see. I think I'm water. And all of a sudden has a connection to its indivisible nature. You might say that's the Atman coming, and then Brahman waiting, and finally it just says, I am the ocean. It gives up its waveform forever. It doesn't rise and fall again, and it's just the ocean now. That's all that's there. So a little bit long-winded, but nicely way of putting it in terms of philosophy and song. It's the Mother Shakti that's at the hub of all this, allowing these desires for form to be granted. And she, much like Brahman, is a bit ambivalent about it. You sure you want to do that? See, this is my own voice speaking. You sure you want to take that form? Well, if you do, remember the origin of all things. the cause of these universes, what the real cause is. So down from Shakti, you can see with all these other little Shaktis intermingling, you come down a few steps, or out, as it were, and you see the cosmic egg there, Hiranyagarbha. That's one of the oldest names for Mahat, or cosmic mind. Hiranyagarbha. It's a shining egg. I mean, Vasishtha has it, Tantra has it, and Samkhya has it. They all borrowed this idea. It's a very ancient saying, just like a chicken came out of an egg. You might say that might be the best answer for who came first. So, at least cosmologically speaking, there's this cosmic egg, Hiranyagarbha, or Lord Brahma. See, it would be Lord Brahma here, right? Everything's feeding back into that and coming out of it. Creation, preservation, and destruction style. So the cosmic egg then, all universes and the 5 elements and objects come out of that. How? By the eternal jnana rays. One of Lord Vasishtha's favorite sayings, Atma Gyan. It's the pure intelligence coming off of that cosmic egg. Or coming off of the word Om, if you want to put it that way. That is pure intelligence that allows forms to appear in this ocean of consciousness. Will invest the formless with form. A beautiful Ramakrishna Upanishad has been written. And in that Ramakrishna Upanishad you'll find one of those. This is very recent, of course, recent Upanishad by some very venturesome devotee of his. See, in there you'll find them saying that Ramakrishna was that soul that nature couldn't form, is one of the verses. Ramakrishna is the soul that nature couldn't form. So when you see Ramakrishna's form, it almost wasn't touching the ground. If he stepped on grass, it hurt him. If he saw a tree being chopped, he grabbed his own side. So he was just so sensitive in that way. Finally he asked one of the Shakti, he asked, please take away this ultra sensitivity so that I can operate here with these people. I need to be effective, as it were. So, a form that nature couldn't form. That's a formless form. And of course, he was in communion with Brahman, in and out, every week, if not every day later. So basically, these eternal jnana rays coming off that word, you can envision, as it were, how important that is to infuse everything with intelligence. That is, whatever intelligence it has come from Mother. That's how we say this. All this has come from Mother. So any beings that exhibit intelligence, that is, nityo nityanam, chetanas chetananam, they exhibit knowledge of their eternal nature, or they are the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, as the quote says out of the Katha Upanishad. That's from Mother. You're seeing Mother there. And when you see the Guru, you're seeing Mother. You're seeing the preceptor, you're seeing Mother. When you see the Acharya, you're seeing Mother. And when you see the Trinity, you're seeing the Guru. So all of that is at her behest and by her design. Come down then to the cosmic egg, further down, all universes and the 5 elements and objects. Now Vasishtha's way, and this is how Swayambhuva is telling Ikshvaku, and was later transmitted to Ikshvaku by Vasishtha's story, transmitted to Sri Ram by Vasishtha's story about Ikshvaku. It's easy to get confused here because Indian stories follow this story inside of story kind of way of telling. So Ram is now hearing how Ikshvaku got in touch with Swayambhuva and got this teaching about the origin of the universe. So Ram is listening. He has a few questions. You'll want to read the Prakarana yourself, the story in the Prakarana. It's the last of the Prakaranas in the whole work. But the real teaching that I think is of most benefit is when the part comes about association with Chinmatra as compared to association with ego and sankalpa. You see there's a double line. Beings don't go any further in their understanding. These are the good things to get to. So you get to the depths. Just like getting to the depths of this, beyond the bulk of the iceberg. So getting to the depths here, it's blocked by what? Their association with the ego and with the mind's projections out of desire. Sankalpa means projections out of desire. So there are projections that are desireless, fairly much. That's, say, Lord Brahma is here, right? The cosmic egg. So he's projecting all this, but it's not for the desire to anything, for anything else than to please the mother. The mother has her children. She wants to see them work out their desires, so she goes to the Trinity and says, get busy. See, it's a new cycle. Why are you resting on your ocean of cosmic milk, caught in a lotus in Vishnu's navel? Get busy and project the worlds of name and form and time and space. Time for another yuga, or series of yugas. And so they wake up. See, how do they wake up? Mother gives Brahma the word, like Krim, or Om. Gives him the word. He says, wait a minute, I'm not quite sure how to do this. Here, let me try. He projects the worlds of name and form. Souls get into it. The minute they open their eyes, say, we don't want this, and they die. There's a beautiful story that I heard both from the Vedanta tradition and from Kala Rinpoche when I sat at his feet, a wonderful Tibetan teacher. They both told the same story in different language about how Lord Brahma tried to create and tried it on his own, but it didn't work. The minute the worlds appeared, all the souls saw through it. And so he went to the Divine Mother and said, I really should have consulted you in the beginning, Ma, but I've just got to say I can't do what you ordered because everybody sees through the ruse that I'm putting forth of Sankalpa. And so Mother said, well, that's because I didn't give you the bijam, the seed. You fool, take this, plant it in the next creation, and they'll all love the worlds. They'll all love these universes in space and time. See, because they're imbued with intelligence, aren't they? Do you really going to fault anyone for seeing the beauty of what's here? Really, the fault only begins when they start falling out of that harmony with that beauty, or when they transgress the laws of Dharma. So that's when they start suffering, causing suffering to others. Before then, well, what was the problem really? See, it's Mother's creation. In other words, it's all Brahman, right? So it's only when they fell into this negative sankalpa that they began to fall out of the laws of Dharma and cause suffering, and then perceive suffering everywhere, brood, and so forth. So what is that double line? It's the illusion of bondage they've fallen into, when they were really ever free, never bound. Ever free, never bound. The Guru will tell you about that, and with Shakti as its impetus, will tell you about that. Basically like this. Jaya Sadguru Ishvara Prabhaka He Bhavaroga Vinakara Vishaka He Anayena Rahitava Shri Charane Punya Deva Dayakara Dina Jane. So basically he says, Jaya Sadguru Ishvara Prabhakahe. Verily, to thee, O illumined teacher, who is the leader of our souls, the one who destroys the effects of the disease of worldliness and suffering, may my mind remain steadily fixed on thy holy feet of ultimate sanctuary. O teacher divine, kindly shower compassion on thy humble devotee. A beautiful song written by one of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees. Jaya Sadguru Prabhakahe, Ishvara Prabhakahe, Ishvara. Going to the source, the great teacher of all teachers. And sort of what Ram is doing with Vashishta through Ikshvaku, and then finally to Swayambhuvamana. This is a line of succession called Guru Parampara. And this is your consort inside. This is your counsel inside. because everything outside hasn't been explaining this to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a future avatar coming and asking questions of anyone. See? Didn't Ixbaku himself say, did you hear what I was reading in the first half? So, well, I found that all I had to do was go to myself for everything. I didn't have to ask anyone anything anymore. It was all there in me. Then a doubt rose. So the doubt rose on a very deep level, didn't it? What is all of this? He was fine in his individual life, in the Dharma, in the teachings, consulting his own self, meditating on the Lord as his own self, seated in his own heart, until finally he started to be endowed with the compassion for all souls, which Sri Ram was known for. Compassion for the fallen and the lowly beings. So when he started, he said it himself, when I started seeing the ocean of suffering, then I had a question. See, he wasn't in the ocean of suffering, thank God, you see. But he saw it, like seeing the poison in the snake. You might say it was kind of like it was like a veterinarian, you see. Well, the veterinarian had finally put out a book said, "Zoo veterinarian, I quit." You see. He was missing legs and fingers and arms and so forth. Zoo veterinarian, I quit. The name of his biography. So he got to dissecting a snake, you see, and seeing that there was poison in it. So he got to see the workings, but then he asked, why does this poison have a snake that causes everyone suffering? So basically, why is this world so beautiful and moving like a snake, you see, in cycles and everything, but it has this poison in it to inject into people? So he had a question, he had a doubt, so he had to go to a higher source. That higher source was there because of Chinmatra. It was a soul that associated with the highest consciousness that removes ignorance for all time. So here is where this cycle comes to no good end, when it hits this double line. There are some souls go towards their own intelligence, and some souls go toward playing with their own intelligence in a selfish way. And they stop right there at that double line. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to destroy some kalpa. The chitta, their thoughts cannot become focused on the Atman anymore. And they can't attain abhava, the knowledge of non-existence. What did he say here? Basically, see, did you remember it? This whole world is like a Gandharva castle in the sky, is the original Sanskrit. Gandharva castle means all these beings focused in a cloud castle in the sky. It's as real as that. So to realize that is called abhava. It's probably not the ultimate end of realization, but it's a very precious thing for most beings to realize the unreality of the worlds of name and form and time and space. Because all the things that are happening in the worlds then are unreal, like suffering, like war, like disease, like lack of peace. All of those things don't exist then, if you realize that the whole world that's underlying them also doesn't exist. And what kind of a bid for existence could they all have in your mind that has realized that? Or in the mind that has realized that? So it's a welcome peace that comes. It's the ultimate non-attachment. And you can see anything go on there from that point. 400,000 people dying in tidal wave and go, look at all those bubbles dissolving back into the ocean of consciousness. That's a bit literal, I know. Those are flesh and bone bubbles actually dissolving into a real ocean there that got a little angry and rose up. So, but imagine seeing that from a distance and seeing how, if you could actually see the soul dynamic of 400,000 souls dying, which one of them are following this route back to intelligence, and which one of them are caught in desire to come back again and experience another tidal wave, or another landslide, or another cancer, or another world war. My teacher used to say that. I've seen 2 world wars, and a third is on the horizon, he told us. It's a quote he made. So, this is grounds for what? Grounds for fear, grounds for pity, grounds for other things? No, it's grounds for renouncing the world, which is unreal to begin with. So if you find that out, what kind of a fool are you if you don't realize it? And you just decide to stay in the idea that all of this sankalpa is real. It's like looking at a screen and saying, oh, I think the movie's real. The screen doesn't think so. The projectionist doesn't think so. So why are you in the audience believing it? The screen is Brahman, the projectionist is Ishvara or Shakti. So why don't you join the company of the holy and free yourself and be at peace? Well, abhava would be the penultimate result of that. Swayambhuva is telling Ikshvaku, who explained it to Vashishta, who is telling Ram, in the house that Mahamaya built. See, it's all being explained. And what's the ultimate goal of that conclusion of abhava, or the experience of abhava? All is Brahman. They come full circle again. This too is Brahman. That too is Brahman. This also is Brahman. And no doubt we can use these very terse and terrible examples like wars and tidal waves and so forth, but that doesn't do justice to the fact of the experience of abhava. Because basically there are so many blissful and beautiful things about your own self that are in abhava too. We just use these examples to scare the bejesus out of you. So send you on, give you some impetus towards realizing your true nature, because you're missing out on all the bliss. Do you want the fun of the world, or do you want the bliss of Brahman? It's like a couple of my Vaishnava friends say, do you want Vishnu or do you want vagina? That's what they say in Vaishnavism. They're quite literal about it. So do you want Vishnu? They want Krishna. They want the ultimate experience, not being born again and again in the womb of Maya. Now, there is one quote down here at the bottom here, and it is about this abhava. Vashishta says, he actually values this very much. He says, after calming sankalpa, calming it, this mind that wants to project all the time, gets excited, calm it. It's very yogic. Contemplate all things with the wisdom eye of abhava and wear it like a sword. So you have this sword of abhava, like Mother Kali's sword, that's cleaving through, cutting through all misconceptions or potential problems right at the outset, before they get into the mind and become habitual. And you engage in sankalpa as if it were real, like starting out being born in the womb of Maya, from the womb of the mother. You're born, baby, you get spanked, you start to grow, you get nursed and so forth. You begin to grow and you enter into a society like this, who knows nothing about any of this and won't teach you. And then you have to go looking for a teacher. Maybe there's so many of them, some of them are spurious and there's only a few authentic, and you have to weed through those. Vashishta's Shankara are both very famous for Guru Viveka, Guru Aviveka. They're the two teachers that really say what's not being told today, is you need a guru of discrimination. You want to stay away from gurus of non-discrimination. So all of that trouble to come here just to realize my true nature, maybe I just want to bring Mahashakti with me. Maybe I want to know that everything's Brahman and bring Mahashakti with me. See, you need friends in high places. One male, one female. Shiva and Shakti. So there you see the teaching from Yoga Vasishta, along with readings from the actual Prakarana, the story it's in, with a little bit of spiritual history around Ram and his gurus and Paramagurus, all being told by this hoary old sage and seer, Vasishta, and transmitted in a way that is very poetic, very scriptural, very beautiful, and also with words that are very convincing, like Upanishads and so forth are. Now, I think where to go with this, since we're talking about Lord Brahma all the time, in the remaining time, let's go to this teaching on Lord Brahma's universal projection to understand even more deeply in a third chart in this third class on Christmas Eve, exactly what's afoot in this beautiful cosmology of Mother India. Through different ages, she's propounded this in various ways through her children, through her precious spiritual children, like her sons and daughters, who are these great souls. The only reason for them to take a body, then, is to come here and flex their dharmic muscles a little bit so that they can further qualify themselves in the task of, as Ram Prasad sings, convincing people of the illusion of finitude. Convincing people of the illusion of finitude. And you're not a finite soul, you're an infinite soul. You're not a body-mind mechanism, you're pure spirit. Convince them of that. In fact, there's a beautiful story about Lord Brahma sending his son Vasishta, who is one of the 10 mind-born sons, down to earth. We were talking about it at the break. Yeah, he said, put him in a hypnotism. Lord Brahma and Vasishta felt horrible. And Lord Brahma took the spell off him. Why did you do that to me, Father? I felt like I was drowning. I felt like I was dying. And he said, well, that was called Maya. And I wanted you to experience it because you're going to have a birth on earth as Lord Vasishta. And so you need to know what people are feeling down there. Would that we would have somebody like Lord Brahma to take that away from us as quickly as he did to his son, mind-born son, right? But so further instruction was, as you go down into that, into that world called Bhur Loka, you're going to find these different kinds of people. You're going to find people who hate you and are against everything you say and do. You should avoid them. And you're going to find people who are suffering and not willing to get out of their suffering. You're going to find people who are struggling, and you can help them to whatever extent they will allow you to help them. And you're going to find people who are invested with the 4 treasures and the 6 jewels. Those you want. They will support you. They will back you. And they will learn deeper from your realization. 4 treasures and 6 jewels are what? Viveka, Vairagya, Satsampati, and Mumukshutvam. And the 6 jewels are part of the 3rd treasure. Samadhamma, Upuiti, Tiksha, Samadhana, and Shraddha. So that's a teaching that Lord Vasishta knew well, and Lord Brahma is telling him, when you find people on earth, if they're invested with those, they're qualified to learn the Advaita Vedanta. The struggling aren't yet, the suffering aren't yet, the bound and ignorant, of course, aren't yet, and the antagonistic aren't yet. So look for those souls on earth. Kind of as teaching for us here, isn't it? Amidst dharmic circles and sanghas who are very small numbers, especially in contrast with those around us. The human race. Man unkind, sometimes we call them. So this teaching then, with that preface, is Lord Brahma's universal projection. From the Brahma Upanishad is said, unto him was imparted the supreme wisdom of Brahman. He is Atman and he is Prana. He represents both the life and death of the gods. He controls them and the jivas through his prana, which belongs to the nadis. In dreamless sleep, they pass through that state into their own abode, like a falcon piercing the sky to rest in its own nest. Now that's somewhat esoteric, but those of you who have been in the Vedanta or hearing the Dharma for a decade or more, whether it be Buddhist or Vedantic Dharma, you can begin to understand that and have some transhuman flavor, as they say in Zen, in your mind around what this means. So, of course, we're talking about Lord Brahma. To him was imparted the supreme wisdom of Brahman. Remember I told you about Mother giving him the seeds? The Shakti. He is Atman, because he's realized the self in all. And he is prana, the cosmic energy that is there, flowing through the nadis, which are his too. Or you could say which are hers and which he's helping the prana flow through. And he controls the jivas, that's embodied beings, and the gods as well. Like Krishna sang in the Gita, that beautiful sloka where he's talking about the regimen of souls are born and then helplessly in Prakriti. In Prakriti, you want to go back and look at Prakriti again. They're born in Prakriti helplessly, and then they return back all helpless of how they get projected and how they get withdrawn. But he said there's a few among there who come to know me in truth, and they escape that. Actually, a beautiful story by Sri Ramakrishna, because he went and saw an old grinding mill. And the old grinding mills in India at that time, probably the English had helped deposit them there, were these big, huge central timber. And they had hollowed out a big flat stone, and put a hole in it, and dropped the timber in there, and affixed it to that stone. So then the river, or the mules, or whatever it was or people that powered the turning of that timber, caused the stone to turn. And there's another stone that was put on top of, and then a little hopper, a little bit of spout there that you poured the grain in, started that timber turning that big stone, and it ground whatever you put in there into flour, and the flour would come out and you'd gather it. So Sri Ramakrishna saw that evidently. He said, oh, look there's a couple stones there that got caught in the groove. A couple seeds there, grains of rice, that got caught in the little groove. In other words, where the timber met the stone, there had to have been a little groove there, you see. And so some of the rice poured in the hopper was spilling out and not getting ground. It was not becoming grist for the mill, as they say. Ground in the wheel of birth and death. But they were these pieces of grains of rice that stayed in that as it went around and stayed free of all the grinding process, you see. So Sri Ramakrishna's story of how some souls can stay free of that manifestation in and out of Prakriti all the time because they know the workings. So this is not just India, this is truth. This is what's happening to people. We can put this in English. We can understand this and be free of Maya. So I put it to you in three forms here. The iceberg, the stainless cosmos universe, and now we're looking at it as Lord Brahma's own projection. In the remaining time, with that beautiful quote from the Upanishad, it's Lord Brahma's own Upanishad, isn't it? Brahma Upanishad, that is talking about how he is Atman, how he controls, he is prana, he runs the prana through mother's nadis. And beautifully at the end there, in dreamless sleep, that's deep sleep by the way, they pass through that state into their own abode. So from waking to dreaming to what? Deep sleep. The rice is going to get reground, isn't it? From there into deep sleep without seeing the seeds, maybe humorously that you are one of the seeds being ground. So you're disidentified from your seed form and you get caught in a little groove called the falcon in its nest. You return to your own abode. The first song Swamiji ever sang to Sri Ramakrishna was that. Mono chalo nija niketane samshaya, and so forth. It is basically, oh mind, return to your own abode. So like a falcon in its nest, escape, pierce through the dream, pierce through the deep sleep state, past Lord Brahma's projection, which is sankalpa at a very high level, and into your own true nature, which you always were, always will be, never will not be, despite the magnificent phenomena of this projection. Unbelievable how deep, how wide, how profound it is, and fully understandable why people might not see it or escape it. But there you are, having seen it, what should you do with that wisdom? So there you see the transcendent or transcendent reality, Brahman, at the hub of everything, just like the non-dual sky of awareness in our first chart, and just like this all-pervasive Brahman here in the second chart. You see here two quotes about that. Again, both from the Brahma Upanishad, since this is Lord Brahma's projection. Quote, in the waking state he is Brahma. In the dreaming state he is Vishnu. In the deep sleep state he is Rudra. And in the fourth state he is the supremely indestructible one. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, my students can connect this with the Mother Upanishads. In the waking state he is Brahma, Brahma Granti. In the dreaming state he is Vishnu, Vishnu Granti. In the deep sleep state he is Rudra, Rudra Granti. So they're providing over these different levels, you see, of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep as forces that they will only let certain souls through. Oh, you want to be a grain of rice just on the edge? Okay, go ahead for a while. You can watch the circling process. You don't need to become flour, grist for the mill. Say Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva to their votaries at each level of Kundalini awakening. Mother. The other quote next to it, neither do worlds exist, nor do they not exist. Neither do the Vedas and Devas exist or not exist. Neither does the Father and Mother exist nor not exist. Only Brahman shines forever. So existence, non-existence, bhava, abhava, you might say, is put on hold. From the third eye of Brahma, all he sees is Brahman. Pure existence, if you want to put it that way, or an existence that holds both the possibility for fullness and emptiness, or manifestation and void within it, just like a snake holds poison. Because that poison in a snake can be used to heal diseases when you extract it. Comes a remedy for snake bite itself. So all of these things then have to be seen from a transcendent understanding, which would be what would happen if you became one with Brahman. You'd be able to see this. I hate to even leave that level of this chart, because there's so much non-dual beauty there, if you could say as much. But you see here what happens then. The path of the gods. Now he just said in this top quote, he represents both the life and death of the gods. This is over long, long periods of times that the gods and goddesses exist. Like these minor Shaktis we were talking about, see? And these forces that come out of them are like gods and goddesses. So for a long time they'll hold their bodies. For ages and ages they'll hold their bodies. And they're fixed in one place. That's the rub. But when they do dissolve, they'll dissolve into her. And she's so close to them. Like my teacher's email message, Mother is now very close. See? So they really feel the presence. But there you see the path of the gods. We're going from top down here. Maybe we should have started from the path up. But let's go reverse of the arrows and directions. In the path of the gods you see these four states teaching off to the left, and his four seats. Turiya is Mahavishnu. That's his head. Deep sleep is his purusha, the throat. A dream is the prana in the heart, and waking is the jiva in the navel. So assigning, as it were, these 4 chakras to the 4 kinds of beings with these 4 stations or seats, asanas. The gods, Brahma has his asanas, you might say. And so he will get into them, and you might be one of them if you're a god. Just like Lord Brahma put his hand on Vasishta's head and put him into Maya. He might, if you're under his tutelage, under his blessed instruction, then you might have that, he might take you on. One of my favorite stories about that is a lover of Lord Vasishta is walking in the Ganges River. He's thinking, oh, I wish I had a vision of Vasishta. So way inside in Vasishta's land, in the loka of Vasishta, Vasishta feels that desire of his devotee, standing down there on earth, out there in the Ganges River, having this pure desire, and visits his devotee standing there in the Ganges River. What's that called? A vision. I just had a vision of Vasishta. It came straight from where Vasishta is, and he blessed you with that vision because you had that pure desire. It doesn't matter how many spiritual miles or how many kalas, how many phases of time are between you and Vasishta. It's immediate. Consciousness is immediate like that. It intersects everything and it permeates everywhere. So a beautiful story in that tradition. Oh, standing in the river, oh, I wish I could actually see Vasishta. Vasishta visits him as a vision. It's called darshan. So in that way we can explain his 4 states and his 4 seats. Lord Brahma, not a lot of teachings about him, so this is very beautiful and valuable to entertain. Now, let's take the quote over on the right first. Dearest Mother, greatest Goddess, Saraswati, female swan among the cluster, before the faces of the 4-faced God, that's Brahma, may the all-white Saraswati sport forever in my mind. O spouse of Brahma, whose thick tresses deck the crescent moon, thou art the stream of nectar that extinguishes samsara's heat. That's from the Mother Upanishad, the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad. Remember that? So we studied that, and we'll study another Mother Upanishad in Seattle, coming at our retreat soon, winter retreat. But Saraswati Rahasya means secret. So she is the great secret. Her teachings are secret or esoteric, but she's actually the secret behind the teachings, is how the Upanishads puts that. So as you come down, and what we mean by down, and we mean out. Remember the chain of evolutes that comes out? The souls are using the 12 spandhas and the 24 cosmic principles as, you might say, when they're coming in, they're using them as handholds, like a ladder. When they're coming out, they're using them as niches in the cliff to put your feet in. His 4 feet, for instance. So coming down or out in this chain of evolutes, they're using the tattvas. It's very important to understand, not a common teaching either, because we have to know how consciousness uses the tattvas to get where it's going. It can't just appear and nothing happens and everything is illusory and veiled and dreamlike like that. There's actually a dynamic which souls are following, like a trail of breadcrumbs. They're coming down through cosmic mind to mind. Maybe say start with Om, then coming down to cosmic mind, then to mind, to intelligence, ego, and thought, and then to the tanmatras, the dream state, the subtle elements and subtle senses, then finally waking up out of dream into the gross elements and the gross senses, tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling, earth, air, fire, water, ether, and all of a sudden they've come full out. That's the chain of evolutes. Sanchara prati sanchara, out. Now, at the end of their life, they have to turn and move in. This way, then it's all of a sudden it's rungs to the ladder, up as it were, inward ascension towards to their source again. If they have come out and reached the double line, souls, then they're not going to be able to climb up and out again. They're going to stay there revolving. Krishna says so in the Gita. People caught in Rajas and Tamas just fall or revolve all the time. They've hit the double line. But those souls who know themselves give up the body willingly and move into back to their subtle state in reverse fashion, but using the tattvas. If you've got a world, many of the cultures of which have forgotten such things as tattvas, in sentient principles, yes, but so important for the sentient soul uses them to move through states of awareness and back again. That's why we harp all the time on the old Samkhya. Had people come up to me and say, oh, Samkhya, Samkhya, this, Samkhya, that, so old, it's so ancient. But every philosophy is borrowed from it in India. And some of it is leached and leaked over into Judaism and Sufism and so forth too. It explains how we get in and out of our bodies, for one thing, and that's just a very basic start to the whole process. It also explains the kingdoms of heaven within you, and it also explains how you get into a formless state, how you seed the seeds of nature, see them and give them up, and how you return to your true nature again. It's all explained by this 24 cosmic principles. Shaivism added another 12 spandhas called vibrational spheres on top of that. Ishvara is one of them. Shiva, Sadashiva is another. So there are dynamics to this movement. We have to know them. Because why? What does it do if we know them? Destroys Maya. That is, destroys probably better said, destroys Maya's influence on us. Good luck destroying Maya and the rest of the world. As even the gods with their bodies, you see, are having a problem with that. So what about the ancestors? What kind of problem are they having? There you see the Pitriyana, path of the fathers. Below that, Tiryan Marga, path of lower births. So sort of you can see where the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and Sri Krishna came forth later, after Ram and after the Trinity and so forth, with this idea of these paths, Tiryan Marga, Pitriyana, and Devayana, path of the lower births, path of the fathers, and path of the gods. Krishna later put that into the sunlit path and the moonlit path. By the moonlit path, they come to return. By the sunlit path, they go never to return again. So they're not going to take bodies again if you've reached the Devayana. Not come back to earth. May even transcend if they have the wherewithal to do so, and it's their pure desire, into a formless state. What's that called again? Abhava. The quote by the side there with the beautiful picture of Saraswati there, 5 factors are there in her: being, shining, loving, form, and name. The first 3 pertain to Brahman. The 2 others constitute the world. Leave aside the last 2 and be intent on the former 3. Whether inside or out, practice concentration on her. Again, from the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad, these beautiful secrets she gives, but she's the secret really. So basically you can see there, being, shining, and loving belong to Brahman. Name and form belong to the world. You see why I wanted to use this chart for form and formlessness, the subject of the class. Being, shining, loving, formlessness. Name and form, form. And even seated form, deep dreaming form, deep sleep form, you see. So, beautiful quote from the Upanishads, awaken us to the further and deeper truths of this. In the remaining 3 minutes, I see, we have these last 2 quotes. Only those who get attached to pleasure do work for the sake of its fruits. Though really the master of the senses, they become bound and take various forms, wandering constantly among the three pathways as a result. Three pathways. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, path of the birth, path of the fathers, path of the gods, tamas, rajas, sattva, whatever you want to call it. Immanent world, transcendent world, and so forth, ultimate world. You can find all sorts of triputtis, or triple designations, to apply across the breadth and depth of India's philosophies in different ages that they've found to propose and explain these truths to us so that it remains in our minds as we take on bodies. Svetashvatara comes forward with his take on this. The great rishi, of course, who is the Swayambhuva of his line. That is a great seer who put together the Svetashvatara Upanishad with his offspring. Quote, "He who is the one source of all worlds brings forth everything from his own sattvic nature and leads all beings to perfection according to their own karmas, while endowing each with its distinguishing characteristics. Thus he presides over the entire cosmos." He's talking about God with form there, or Lord Brahma. So a fitting place to end this third of 4 classes on form and formlessness. And we will end here then, on time, with the Sanskrit sloka. Om Bhadram, Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Shrinuyama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabhirya Jatraha Stirairangaish Tushtuvamsas Tanuvir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayo Swasti na Indra Vrida Shravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwadevaha Swasti na Starksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we hear with these ears what is good and spiritual. May we see with these eyes what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the universe, with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.